When the devil gets a good hold of you, he's bound to leave his mark on you. And what's more, he'll leave that mark on your children and your grandchildren. And that's the way it was with the catfish. If he'd kept out of the devil's hands, he'd been a whole lot better looking than what he is, and so would his children. You've noticed that the catfish doesn't have any scales like the other fish, but he wasn't always that way. It happened more or less like this. It was a Friday morning that the good Lord created the fish, and when he turned them all loose in the river, it was a mighty fine sight, I'll tell you. And there wasn't any more handsome fish in the crowd than the catfish. He was all covered with red and yellow and blue scales, according to the kind of catfish he was, and he was one of the finest fishes in the river. Well, the good Lord created all the different kinds of fish in the forenoon, and he set out to make all the chickens and the turkeys and the geese in the afternoon. When it come dinner time, he put away the tools and locked the door and put the key in his pocket and went along up to the big house to get something to eat. After dinner, the good Lord and the angel Gabriel were walking along back down the big road, picking their teeth and talking about whether they ought to make the birds with scales like the fish or with feathers, when who did they bump into by the side of the road but old Nick? And he was scraping the scales of some catfish he had just caught. And the good Lord said, "Look here, Nick, what in the name of common sense are you doing with those fish?" Old Nick said, "Well, I noticed it was Friday, and I thought I'd just have a fine fish dinner. And so when I saw how crowded the fish were in the river, I thought it would sort of help matters if I just thinned them out a bit. So I reached down and grabbed a few of the catfish that were handiest, and I was just getting them ready to fry when you came along." And the good Lord came right back. "Well, you look here, you just put those fish back in the water and go about your business, you trifling good-for-nothing black rascal." He made old Nick put all the fish back in the water. Now, where the scales had been scraped off, it hurt so bad that the catfish went down to the bottom and rolled over in the mud to try and do something about the pain. By and by the pain went away, but the scales never grew back, and from that time on the catfish haven't had any scales. And that's what makes me tell you that you better always keep out of reach of the devil, because if you don't, he'll make trouble for you and all your kinfolks.